It's not the years we've taken to get to 16 Harrison Ford movies on this show.
It's the mileage. 15 years of Ford movies so far. But we want to finish this thing by the time Indiana Jones 5 comes out next summer.
Whoa. That's 39 more years of Harrison Ford movies to get through. God, we better haul ass. It's the Ford Fiesta.
Yahoo!
Welcome to the Ford Fiesta. I'm Adam Topman Witt.
And I'm Paul Freeman Preston.
Joining us later in the show to talk about Raiders of the Lost Ark will be the head of his own YouTube channel, all about movies, film critic and friend of ours from the Movie Trivia Schmodown, Dan Murrell.
A movie so massive, we need to bring in the big guns. Dan is a real movie fan, so this will be great.
And if we have to tell you what Raiders of the Lost Ark is about, why are we even friends? But you may have noticed recapping movies gives us a chance to roll out a ton of jokes, and we're not going to deny ourselves any of that. But first...
Harrison Ford news. What's new in the world of Harrison Ford? Okay, well, this is what's new. Harrison Ford, James Mangold, and Phoebe Waller-Bridge premiered footage from Indiana Jones 5 at D23 Expo. There was also a show floor display with costumes and storyboards. And one of the coolest parts, of course, is that Harrison Ford got emotional presenting this footage. Right when you think the guy doesn't care about any of these projects, he's high all the time or whatever, right. He's like wants to kill his characters off. He's talking about how this movie has heart, and he felt that Phoebe Waller-Bridge was a lot to do with that. Pretty cool presentation, and people in the room, without it being on the internet yet, got to see footage.
Oh, man. That's just amazing. I mean, just seeing even the poster, just the image of him. Like, you sent me, someone caught a shot of him in the streets, like, just dressed in the costume. I'm like, it's just so exciting. It's so exciting. We're getting a new Indiana Jones movie, Paul. We decided to do this show at the right time and just got a little behind.
Yeah, and so, look, I mean, great day to talk about Raiders of the Lost Ark when you're on the verge of, 42 years later, you're on the verge of another one. It's just crazy. Of course, I think we both agree maybe there should have been another 3 or 4 in there, but we'll take what we can get.
I think sequels should be made every 3 years. It should be the law. Waiting around to make the perfect movie. You see what Friday the 13th did? They're like, I don't know, maybe the sun kills people? Just move on. Just keep making them.
Yeah, he'll end up in space, right? That's where
he'll end up in space eventually. They all do eventually.
Well, speaking of Harrison Ford's other massive franchise, Han Solo's original blaster sold for, at auction, the original blaster. Take a guess, Adam.
Wow, the real one. Not some fake crap.
The original blaster sells for
$500,000.
You're half right.
I'm half right.
$1,057,500.
Oh my God. Wow.
Somebody really wanted that.
Screen used. I mean, people lay out money for they had to make 5 of those and half of them didn't up on screen. But this is the one that Harrison Ford picked up, shot. You saw the opening montage there, shot those stormtroopers. That's the one, huh?
Yeah. I mean, I went to the Peterson Automobile Museum recently and they had the DeLorean there. Okay. This is not any DeLorean. This is the DeLorean. I looked in the door, and there's all
the actual 10 Commandments.
He can, yes, right there in the dashboards everywhere where he can punch in the date. I mean, that's where he did. I look in the back. That's the out of time license plate.
Wow.
That's the flux capacitor. It's like there's something about being the thing that is part of iconic movie history, and someone thought that was worth over $1 million.
That's amazing. Well, of course. I mean, you or I would say, yeah, that's worth $1 million, but someone actually did pay for that. Yeah. That's so huge.
And since it's been a minute since we did our last show, this is news on this show. Anne Heche passed away.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, his co-star, Ford's co-star in 6 Days, 7 Nights. And supposedly he fought for her to be in the film.
Yeah.
And you'll love this quote. This is vintage Ford. Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn who you're sleeping with. We're going to make the best romantic comedy there is, and I'll see you on set. So,
all right.
She got the part. And then, of course, Wolfgang Peterson passed away, too, responsible for
Air Force
One.
So. Yeah, we've lost some Harrison Ford compatriots.
But at 80, he's still going.
He's still going. But
getting it done.
How much did your heart skip a beat when you heard he'd crashed a plane into a golf course, though? You're like, no, I'm not moving on without Harrison Ford in my life. He's got to be here until he dies at 105. Yeah.
Okay, I hope so. Then, of course, Googling Harrison Ford news gets you, express.co.uk says Ford uses a stylish accessory to look younger with gray hair.
Oh.
Adam, with grayish hair, you may want to keep this in mind.
Express.co.uk? They're breaking the news?
They say round specs with blue-rimmed glasses. That will give you a stylish accessory for your gray hair.
Okay. All right. Round. All right, because I got to get new glasses here soon. Yeah.
Yeah. But I feel like, thinking wildly, kind of thing you think he wore in Age of Adeline. Am I picturing him in that movie?
Okay.
With the goatee, and I think he had the round blue-rimmed glasses.
Okay. Age of Adeline.
And Daily Mail. Oh, Daily Mail. You never disappoint. Ford was seen running errands in Santa Monica in a black T-shirt weeks after his 80th birthday.
That's the news, baby.
Yeah. He didn't die after his 80th birthday. He went out and did stuff. Well, what a shock. So.
Santa Monica. You spent a lot of time in Santa Monica, Paul. I think we need to take the Daily Mail. We need to coordinate this, put this on a board, figure out what days he's hanging out in Santa Monica. We just need to hit for a Saturday, see if we can circumnavigate somewhere around that bike store. Where was this?
This was, in Santa Monica.
Yeah.
And I think it comes down out of the Malibu Hills where he probably lives.
Right.
And gets his stuff done there.
In a black T-shirt. Black T-shirt in summer. See, this guy's a real man. All right. Now, one more quick recurring show segment before we get to the recap. This date in Ford history.
History.
September 11th, 2017, Ford directs traffic after a backup in the Lincoln Tunnel so he could get his Mercedes-Benz out of the Lincoln Tunnel. I've seen photos of this.
I watched the video. It's hilarious.
Oh, there's a whole video? Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
It's real brief, but he gets on. Let's go. Come on. Go. Move. Like he's like in full major move mode.
Yeah. You need someone to get out there and yell at traffic. That's awesome. I love that. I love that he actually flies. He's actually good at it. He's actually a leader. He's actually like heroic. He hasn't screwed anything up. He's not been Me Too'd, none of this stuff. And here he is, if need calls for it, Harrison Ford is going to jump out. He's going to direct traffic, get everyone home safely. That's the Harrison Ford way.
It's very funny you should say that because those are the exact type of things I would write in fan mail to him when I was just a wee nip.
Yeah?
I would send him off a letter and say, like, Harrison Ford, you're the best Han Solo and Indiana Jones. And I really love that you're just not in the tabloids, like you get, like the closest thing came to him being in the tabloids was when he got his ear pierced in the late 90s.
Right.
But back then it was like all these dummies are on in the tabloids for dumb stuff, and not Harrison Ford. He was just married and had kids and making movies and being awesome.
He ain't making no sex tape. He's keeping his nose clean, keeping his family fed. Yeah. Boy, I'll tell you, there's something we didn't realize separated us. You actually wrote a letter to Harrison Ford. I never wrote a letter to him, a fan letter. That's awesome.
Well, it went to Pat McQueenie. Is now past former manager. But it got me things like if you've ever seen the streaming version of the show or anything movie guys are streaming, the Harrison Ford signed autographs behind me. I got one of those. And they were sent out, no doubt, by the manager as well. But it was cool. I mean, hopefully the word got to him that some kid thought he was cool because he wasn't, being a Madonna about everything. Yeah.
My mom used to write Yoko Ono. Then we got on her Christmas card list. So we just started getting Yoko Ono Christmas cards every Christmas. I don't know if she still gets them, but it's true. And on September 22nd, 1967, thinking about now, Paul, what year was Dead Heat in a Merry-Go-Round? I bet like 66.
Yeah.
So yeah, Ben Ford's born. He's just getting going. 67. It's like right around the time he's shooting Love or Love's coming out. They're going to see Love in the theater to see Harrison Ford punch Jack Lemmon. But they couldn't go because they got a newborn baby. So anyway, Ben Ford.
I remember he was thrilled to be under contract like people used to be back in the day.
Columbia contract.
He would be on contract. Yeah, to like put me in all these movies. Give me these small parts. I got kids now. So.
Yeah.
I remember that was his comment about all that.
That is what's the funny thing about those first 5 movies or so we've done on the Ford Fiesta is like, yeah, that's all the Columbia contract is like, all right, get into this Glenn Ford movie and say, fire! Damn it! Fire!
And Ben Ford is the chef, I believe, right? So he had Ford's filling station out here in LA, and I can't believe I never went. But thankfully, the only Ford's filling station that is left is in LAX. And one of the last times I flew last summer back to New York, I went to Ford's filling station. It had a great breakfast burrito. There's pictures of Ben and Harrison cooking together on all over the walls. And yeah, so I hope he's still doing it. I know he wrote books, but I hope he's continuing his chef adventure and open another place out here. It'd be fun.
You know, I thought that was at a different airport. I didn't realize that's at LAX. Like, I'm going to get there early next time and go to Ford's filling station.
I can't tell you what terminal it was.
Yeah, it's obviously not one I go
can't remember
to.
if it was United or Delta,
Yeah.
American. I don't know. See, that's the problem. But look that up.
Yeah? Oh.
Make the extra time so you can walk across the length of the terminal just to check it out. Well, I know you'd have to.
Hey, look, all of LAX, as you and I know, Paul, all of LAX is a location from Dead Heat on a Merry-Go-Round, so I always enjoy, there's a very general Harrison Fordness to LAX.
Yes, everyone I give an LA locations tour to from out of town said, well, you've seen one already.
Yeah.
When you flew it. That was from Airplane. Anyway.
Yeah, that's from Airplane and Did Heat on a Merry-Go-Round and Blind Rage for anybody who watched our show last week.
All right, well, let's get on to the recap of greatest movie of all time.
This is the greatest movie of all time. Paul, here we are. We decided to go live, recording this to celebrate our favorite movie of all time. We've seen it together so many times in the theater. Paul, you've seen it 3 times this year in the theater?
Twice. Well,
okay.
now you count the outdoor screening as a theater screening.
Sure.
It's not in
you
the
count
living
that.
room. So.
No, you count that.
In fact, I can't remember the last time I saw it in the living room. I haven't watched it at home. There's been no need.
That's a good point. That's a good point. And that's one I should run into the ground. That should be on like every night just for a meditative, relaxation. God, this movie's so good. Paul, this movie's so good.
It's time for the recap.
Do you like Jaws?
Do you like Star Wars?
Do you like Close Encounters?
Are you a late 70s child raised on books chronicling how those movies were made?
Are you 9 years old and only know the name of 2 directors?
Well, get ready to have your 3rd grade head explode because George Lucas and Steven Spielberg have decided to make a movie together.
Well, Paul, it can't get any better than that.
Well, save your breath, fella, because it's not just any movie like Star Wars, it's another swashbuckling adventure.
Okay, that sounds like the greatest movie of all time without knowing a single other detail.
Han Solo's in it.
What?
More accurately, Harrison Ford perfecting the pulp character of a charming rogue, a journey he began with Han Solo, who looks increasingly like a triple to the home run that is Indiana Jones.
Legend has it that Spielberg and Lucas vacationed in Hawaii to ignore the openings of Star Wars and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Spielberg expressed interest in making a James Bond movie, but George Lucas said, and, I'm paraphrasing, "F*** James Bond. James Bond is bullshit. I'll show you where the money's at, bitch. Indiana f***ing Jones." Again, paraphrasing.
Our story begins in ancient Mesopotamia as Moses received the 10 Commandments from God and transcribed them.
But that's not what this movie's about.
True.
Harrison Ford plays Indiana Jones, world-traveling adventurer and archaeologist, traveling the globe to find rare antiquities.
But we don't know that yet as a mysterious group makes their way through the jungles of South America in 1936. Their leader, shrouded in mystery until a classic serial moment. One of the crew betrays the leader, pulling a gun that is whipped out of his hand by a whip lashing out of the darkness, followed closely by Indiana Jones. Stepping out of the darkness and into his close-up, Harrison Ford always makes an entrance.
Paging Mr. Ellis.
Fire!
Hi. Han Solo. I'm captain of the Millennium Falcon.
The basically silent film continues to unfold as Indiana Jones enters a mysterious cave, supported only by Alfred Molina, unveiling booby traps, tarantulas, and bottomless pits threatening serial-style danger around every corner until they get to a golden idol protected by dozens of poison dart-firing landmines.
It's classic George Lucas, a world that begs the question, who are these people? And what's going on inside a pulp genre exercise?
Yeah.
Except this time it's executed by a master of pure cinema, Steven Spielberg, who builds the suspense to a crescendo until Indiana Jones gets the idol.
And then, like a roller coaster that clicks its way up the hill and finally crests, all hell breaks loose as Indiana Jones must now navigate all the traps that were meticulously laid out, triggering the landmines, falling in the pit, and being attacked by tarantulas, who push an enormous boulder on him.
A boulder, it may not be how that happened. A boulder is triggered to roll and seal the cave shut, chasing Indiana Jones down a narrow hallway, inches from crushing him, as Lucas and Spielberg mint a Hollywood highlight reel moment in real time right before your eyes.
Indiana Jones escapes only to come face to face with his nemesis.
Son of a bitch.
What, you thought this efficient storytelling machine wasn't going to punctuate that amazing action sequence without a nemesis?
Finally, this silent movie talks and shows off another strength. Smooth exposition. Mm-hmm. Do you wonder who this was and what his relationship to Indy was?
Yeah.
Again, we see there is nothing you can possess which I cannot take away.
And that's basically the first line of the movie. You can just feel this serial installment asking you to return next week to see how Indiana Jones gets out of this one.
Indy escapes and is chased by the native Jovitos, minting another iconic image of Indiana Jones, emitting clouds of tomb dust as he runs from someone trying to kill him. Like another pulp hero, Tarzan, Indy jumps and swings from a vine. It is only now that we hear the Raiders of the Lost Ark theme.
And if you weren't picking up on what Lucas and Spielberg and Williams were laying down, you do now. Crescendo, fly off into the sunset, and Shirley Bassey begins her song, Raiders of the Lost Heart. All right, not really, but that's where it would have gone.
Yeah. Chapter 2, Indiana Jones and the Mystery of the Top Men. Unlike James Bond, Indiana Jones is a teacher. We catch up with him as he's teaching a class.
Web spiders catch and wind their strands around their victims and mummify them before they have them for dinner. Some even devour their own. But spider's not a bad fellow. In fact, in many ways, he's a truly extraordinary creature.
That's not from Raiders of the Lost Ark.
No. You got me. You're right. But, fun fact, one of Harrison Ford's 2 scenes in the 1977 TV movie The Possessed, which would air just a couple weeks before Star Wars hit theaters, began with him as a teacher writing a complex word on a blackboard in the exact same handwriting. So, check it out on YouTube and definitely stay for the end. Paul, would you like to watch the end?
Yes. The Dean of Students, Marcus Brody, tells Indy that some top men from the government would like to talk to him. And at what has to be a record for exposition, 2 minutes later, we know what the Ark is, what the power holds.
Lightning. Fire. Power of God or something.
The phrase headpiece of the staff of Ra has entered our lexicon, and we know the stakes, the bad guys, and how to find the Ark.
Right. To find the Ark, all you have to do is dodge the snake in the entrance room and grab the whip. Run down one screen to the marketplace. Search all 3 baskets for the key, the gun, and the grenade. Wait 15 seconds and the medallion will appear in the same basket as the key. Go back up to the entrance room, use the grenade, run away. A giant hole will appear in the marketplace wall. Go through the hole to the temple entrance. Now you'll need 3 bags of gold in the Ankh. To make room in your inventory, drop the gun and the flute.
Okay, what the hell are you talking about? That is not how you find the Ark.
It wasn't the Atari 2600.
But in case the smoothest storytelling ever has you confused, there's a handy iconic map to sweep you along into the next scene as Indiana Jones flies to Casablanca, Nepal, where we are introduced to Marion Ravenwood in the middle of a drinking contest. And if you didn't catch that she was tough as nails, sharing a complicated past with Indy, she punches him within 30 seconds of meeting him.
Marion Ravenwood holds many grudges against Indy, so she takes his money and sends him packing, unimpressed at the 3,000 miles he's traveled. I guess she doesn't trust him.
Trust me.
But in classic serial fashion, danger is right around the corner in the form of Todt, a Nazi accomplice we saw trailing Indiana Jones on the plane ride. Todt is the opposite of Belloc's French gentlemanly, sniveling weasel villainy. Instead, Todt is a riff on Peter Lorre-style villainy.
What? Hello, my name is Boo. Let me finish. Booberry. My ghostly good blueberry-flavored cereal, Booberry, is part of this complete breakfast.
Tut is not afraid to use force, and just as he's about to say, "We have ways of making you talk," right as you can almost hear an announcer say, "Tune in next week for Chapter 3, Indiana Jones and the Goddamn Partner," a bullwhip cracks, and out of nowhere cutting to the heroic Indiana Jones saying, "Let her go," and triggering Harrison Ford's first cinema fist fight.
It's an old-school, two-fisted action throwback, just like Star Wars, except it's directed by the greatest director of all time. And if you don't think that, then clearly you've never seen the bar fight from Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's a masterful piece of choreography. The entire room shifts in opposition, using every part of the room and every ugly stuntman in England to surround Indy.
Does he get hurt? Yes. Does he win? Yes, he's not Superman. He's just a guy with a whip and an incredible tenacity that will continue to frustrate his villains. He gains the headpiece to the Staff of Ra and a goddamn partner.
I'm your goddamn partner!
And before you can draw another iconic line on a map, we're off to Cairo, City of the Living.
Cairo, City of the Living.
Told you. Indiana Jones has allies all over the world, like Salah, organizer of the greatest diggers in Cairo. So they're all set to find the Ark, but wait, all of the diggers have been taken. By who? Belosh, always one step ahead.
Son of a bitch.
As Indiana Jones and Marion walk through a Cairo marketplace, danger closes in the form of several corporate Nazis controlling a half-dozen local assassins and a Nazi monkey. Show me any other movie you think is better than Raiders of the Lost Ark, and I'll show you a movie that's one Nazi monkey shy of being a masterpiece.
Finding himself unpestered for almost 15 minutes, Indiana Jones is attacked, leading to a Nazi nesting doll of action sequences and visual gags that stacks thrilling set pieces inside of a larger set piece of Marion's kidnapping, including a showdown with a giant sword-wielding villain that Indiana Jones dispenses with in one shot of his pistol. It's one of the biggest laughs of the movie, because in the flurry of fists and whips and swords, we forgot Indy could just do that. And the whole sequence ends with a big explosion.
I want the movie to end with a big explosion.
As Marion is seemingly killed when a truck full of dynamite she was put into does what dynamite does. Indiana Jones slows long enough for Belloc to catch up and ponder the meaning of their life's work in one of Cairo's famous ponder lounges.
But enough dawdling! The next morning, Indy and Salah are off to find the map room, as the steps laid out for the top men earlier are executed for an unconfused audience. In the map room, John Williams, who you might know as the legendary composer of Indiana Jones' theme and Marion's theme and The Basket Chase, already in this movie, turns in another masterpiece with an angelic choir rising as close-ups of the hottest actor of all time show the anticipation and elation of discovering the resting place of the Ark. It's a tour de force of filmmaking that, on the day, was just Harrison Ford looking at a floor.
The Well of Souls is not just a really good name for an Iron Maiden song, it's also an enormous temple once buried beneath the desert, but now uncovered by Salah and his crew. But since Indiana Jones never has a day that gets any easier, when the temple is open, they find the entire floor covered in
Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?
which is the one thing Indiana Jones hates. Well, that and Nazis.
Nazis. I hate these guys.
Indiana Jones drops inches from a cobra which leaps to come face-to-face with him, minting another iconic Hollywood pinup. Just put that over there next to the others, guys. Okay, we've got to move along. There's just too much in this movie, and these are already too hard to write. Let's just say, the Ark, pretty big deal. So, that's all wrapped up. Indiana Jones gets the Ark and saves the day.
Why, Dr. Jones, whatever are you doing in such a nasty place?
Belloc!
Son of a bitch.
Belloc once again shows up to spoil the day, taking what Indy took so long to discover, only to then bury Indy alive, but not before throwing Marion down in the pit with him. He really sucks. Will she survive? Will they escape? Come back to the theater next week for Indiana Jones and the Attack of the Bald Nazi.
Yes, the good news is Marion's alive and back in Indiana Jones's arms. The bad news is he's holding her because she just fell into a temple of snakes. Indiana Jones hatches a plan to cue the Indiana Jones theme by knocking a statue through the wall to a storage room for the dead body props from Poltergeist.
Indy and Marion escape the tomb to see that Belloc is going to fly the Ark out on a plane that is guarded by only one Frank Marshall. So they attempt to sneak on board, only to be thwarted by a huge bald mechanic played by Pat Roach, who would make appearances in the next 2 Indiana Jones movies in addition to 2 roles in this one.
Pat Roach finds out what you get when you fight Indiana Jones. Bitten, punched, sand thrown in your eye, and ultimately chopped up by an airplane propeller. All intercut with Indy rescuing Marion from a cockpit before it explodes when a rapidly approaching flaming trail of gasoline reaches them. Once again, it's twice as thrilling. It's a montage that would make Alfred Hitchcock high-five Sergei Eisenstein.
Is having more action than any other movie outside of Star Wars not enough for you? Well, Raiders of the Lost Ark would like to let you know that it's been holding back, as Indiana Jones goes full Western hero by running down the truck on a horse, punctuated by that classic hit.
Jones boards the truck in one of the greatest action sequences ever filmed, that Wikipedia describes as Jones captures a truck carrying the Ark. Come on, man, add a little flair to it. Yeah, actually, after looking at all that goes down in the scene, I retract my statement. They did the right thing. So after getting the Nazis to practically shoot all the soldiers in the back of the truck, throwing dudes out of the door and windshield, running them off the road, and running them over, Jones captures a truck carrying the Ark.
Yeah, remember, this is the director of Jaws, Close Encounters of the Third Kind in 1941. But most accurately, it's the director of Duel, where Dennis Weaver is relentlessly chased by a truck for 96 minutes.
Jones and Marion then arranged transport to London aboard a tramp steamer, no doubt given a name by executive producer George Lucas, the Bantu Wind.
Okay.
Fun fact, the captain of the Bantu Wind was given a name by Ian Fleming, Katanga.
Unfortunately, Das Boot interrupts the steamer, but they can't find Indy. They take the Ark, they take the girl, they take what they wish.
And then decide whether or not to blow your ship from the water.
And away the Germans go, leaving Indy behind on the ship. Or is he? Eventually, Chocolate Mousse, from Top Secret, look it up, sees Indy and he's made his way on top of the German U-boat, which he travels on the iconic map to an island off the coast of Greece, where he dances on the beach and sings ABBA songs.
Really?
No. Lousy Germans, they ruin everything. And they're not done. Belloc wants to open the Ark.
I'm uncomfortable with the thought of this Jewish ritual.
Could be worse, Dietrich. He could want to give you all circumcisions. But they end up having a parade to the middle of the island, complete with the Ark, and marching, and flags, and costumes, and... Then it's interrupted by Indy, and he's threatening to blow up the Ark with a bazooka.
I think it's a rocket launcher.
Not as much fun to say.
Good point. Indy's done, right? He's got dysentery. He's got pebbles in his pants from being dragged under a truck. He's seen one too many snakes today, so he's done. And he's just going to blow up the Ark. But Belloc makes a very impassioned speech that changes Indy's mind. That and Belloc showed Indy on a poor fly what he was going to do to him if he blew up the Ark.
The parade finally arrives at the canyon of the grand finale, where Belloc is dressed like Haji from Johnny Quest, ready to get those 10 Commandments out already and grade God's penmanship. Unfortunately, upon opening the Ark, inside was only sand.
I don't like sand.
The sand sparks a prequel idea in George Lucas's brain, and also sparks the generators, causing them to explode. Or something does, as spirits seem to exit the top of the Ark and encircle the Nazis watching the ceremony.
Please. Eventually, the beautiful ghost turns into my ex-girlfriend. And the swirling spirits transform into a hellstorm of fire and fury. For what happens next, we'll turn things over to Marion Ravenwood for a thorough recount of the event. Well, it seems like she missed it. Did anyone else see what happened? Dietrich? Tote? Belloc? Well, no one seems to have survived or looked at the events of that evening, which is good, because we really can't keep Dan Murrell waiting any longer.
To wrap up, we next see Indy back with Marcus Brody, arguing with the military brass about how the Ark should be studied.
It belongs in a museum!
They get handsomely compensated, but the government can't be trusted with handling a power that unpredictable. For an example of what Indy and Brody mean, see Everything the Government's Done Ever.
But out on the street, Indy reunites with Marion, and they go for a drink.
You know, a drink.
And much like the Marvel movies, there's an extra scene tacked on at the end to prep you for future films in the franchise. Rare's The Lost Ark ends with a sneak peek of an action set piece from Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And that's Rare's The Lost Ark.
That's it. As if you didn't know, ladies and gentlemen.
The plot.
So now it's chatter time, where we talk about the movie ad nauseum, at length, and
with a noted expert, if we can.
You know, we often bring in a noted expert, and they seem to be more now in these episodes of super popular movies. No one joined us for Journey to Shiloh.
No, Journey to Shiloh we did alone.
But today we have a friend from the Movie Trivia Schmodown, and a buddy of ours who you can find at youtube.com/Dan Murrell Movies.
Mm-hmm.
It's Dan Murrell.
Hey!
What do you know? That's me.
I'll throw out compliments on that site right away, by the way. That is appointment viewing, if I've ever seen appointment viewing, for movie nerds.
Yes.
And, man, there's just so many mornings I've made breakfast with Dan telling me what the box office breakdown was. And all that stuff we used to get into when we were kids. Paul and I even had a conversation recently about how we used to have the top 10 domestic box office memorized. You were like, oh, it was like Star Wars, Jaws, or what? Like there was for a long time I had the top 10 memorized, and you kind of have brought that back. It's very exciting.
It is fun. I remember Sundays eonline.com when I was growing up.
Oh, okay.
I looked for what's the box office. The top 10 used to be easy to memorize because like you had one new movie every 10 years.
Right.
And now it changes every 6 months.
Right. It was E.T., Star Wars.
But then Star Wars came out, was re-released, and then Star Wars moved up, and then E.T. And then it just got complicated.
They were the Avatar and Avengers Endgame of their day.
Home Alone was on there.
Right. Oh, that's right. Yeah, that got up there.
It's pretty crazy.
Well, then eventually Titanic. But Once Upon a Time, I always bring up this point, the biggest movies at the box office were also the best movies. Like Once Upon a Time, it was Empire Strikes Back, Jaws, Rocky, The Godfather.
Right.
Now it's like, which Transformers movie's in the top 20? But one of those Pirates movies is in the top 20.
Yeah.
All right, well, so before we launch into too much, this is my favorite movie of all time. Adam, yours is probably Star Wars. Although, because I always say this is my favorite movie of all time, besides Star Wars, which is a whole other category.
That's a whole other category. That's like, I just heard someone make the reference of like, what music do you like? The Beatles. Like, oh, do you? Besides the boring one, like, what wouldn't I know? Yeah.
But Star Wars is probably your number one, yeah?
Yeah, well, mine has shifted, as you know, Paul. The champion, it knocked out, it was Raiders, Star Wars. Pretty much depending upon what the last one I watched. It became Star Wars for a long time because I was competing in Star Wars trivia. But then Avengers Endgame came along, and I'm like, that is my favorite movie of all time. I hate to say it for Raiders. I hate to say it for Star Wars, but that's just how impressive that movie is to my heart. So yeah, 1, 2, and 3, Avengers Endgame, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Star Wars.
Jockeying for different positions.
All jockeying for different positions. Yeah.
So Dan, I don't know what caused you to want to come to talk about this film of all the Harrison Ford oeuvre. But is this your favorite film of all time? If not, what is?
Jaws is my favorite film of all time.
There we
the
go.
Shirt that I love that we're all wearing Harrison Ford adjacent to this episode shirts. Jaws is my favorite movie of all time. I mean, there could be 5, honestly, but like just pressed to it. It's since I first saw it, it's been my favorite. So,
and you are correct. That is, I could easily say that's the greatest movie of all time. That's,
right. You put that in front of me right now, like that's the greatest movie.
I love it so much. I love Jaws so much.
It's perfect. It's one of a handful of movies. This, by the way, Raiders is another one, a movie that I would legitimately call perfect. When I say perfect, I mean every movie has its little things that, like technical errors or a little
things
tiny
we forgive generally.
Right.
There's nothing we have to forgive.
But generally, like Raiders, like there's nothing that I have to be like, well, that I love the movie except for this one scene I might have done this one plot point doesn't really resolve. Like no,
it was a different time.
It's there are little things, and I'm sure we'll talk about. But I just mean as far as the movie itself. It's like Raiders, Jaws, Casablanca, The Godfather, Network. There's
Back to the Future.
Back to the Future. It's just like you look at it and it's like it's tight. It's just a tight movie.
Not a line out of place.
Right.
And the classic, scripts aren't written, they're rewritten. That classic rewritten thing where you're led with breadcrumbs the entire time, and then everything just inevitably ends where it does. That's a perfect movie. It's like, of course, we are inevitably going to end up here. It's very satisfying, yet surprising.
RoboCop is another one. I call RoboCop a perfect movie.
It's so excessive, but I guess it's perfect.
It is for the story it's telling.
It's got a voice.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of voice.
Well, this one, as you all know, came out in 1981, June 12th, so Harrison Ford, I think, now is officially summer movie guy.
Oh, yeah.
After Star Wars and Empire, even though we had that block of films between that are always crazy. Now we're going to get into establishing Harrison Ford as A, leading man, and B, summer movie guy.
Yeah. The things he will be known for the rest of his career, it's really starting right now, because we didn't know if he could be a leading man. Star Wars was an ensemble.
Yeah.
And after talking about Empire Strikes Back and seeing it recently, you said, Adam, that it was his coming out party. Like, that movie is Han Solo's movie.
It's Han Solo the movie.
Yeah.
It is.
And looking up information on the film, that was Spielberg's deal closer. He's like, watched Empire and went, no, that's our Indiana Jones.
That's Indy.
Yeah.
So it was like an audition almost for the rest of his career.
He's so good in Empire. But he's even better in this. And I have to say, as a Jaws fan, it must have been very, and I don't know what order you saw him in. We
Jaws was pretty early.
Yeah.
Too early.
Too early.
Honestly, it scarred me a little bit.
Yeah,
It's a PG movie.
Yeah, no.
It's 70s PG.
Ben Gardner's head and Quent's demise both. I was probably about 2 years too young because now there's so much accessible information. And, like, I'm glad that parents can research movies for their kids. But, like, I'm probably one of the last of the generation where, like, just because of the lack of information, our parents, to a certain degree, would just cast us into the wild when it came to movies. And sometimes you would see stuff like a guy's face melting off that you weren't quite prepared to see in a PG movie, but, you know, it turned out okay.
Yeah.
But now I feel like some people might not let their kids see a movie like Jaws or Raiders as young as we probably saw it because, you know, there's a detailed description of everything that's in a movie online within 12 hours of it coming out, and I feel like, you know, there's some good things about that, and there's some things that are just like, to me, that was like part of being a kid. Like, sometimes you just kind of, you get that little extra dose of growing up. It was just a little ahead of your time. And Raiders is a movie that has stuff like that all over the place.
Yeah, a lot of death.
Yeah.
There was a lot of excitement over. Now, I wasn't allowed to see Jaws yet, I don't think, when this came out. And the great thing about Jaws was when you weren't allowed to see something, there was a great anticipation for when you finally could.
Yes.
You know, so like, oh, I can't wait. So the buildup for me became the guy from Close Encounters, the movie I liked, and the guy from Star Wars are getting together to make this movie called Raiders of the Lost Ark. Like, whoa. And then also like, you know, you're learning all this stuff and you go, and the Jaws, that movie you can't see yet, that guy also directed that movie. And, you know, and so you're like 6 years old going, directors. I'm interested in directors, which is insane for a young kid.
They're not dummies. This was the tagline on the poster. Indiana Jones, the new hero from the creators of Jaws and Star Wars. So, you know, just lead with it.
Yeah.
Why mess around? So it makes $389.9 million at the box office. That's its releases and re-releases over time. That's $248 domestic, $141 million international, on a budget of $20 million.
Well,
wow,
that's some nice pocket change to take home.
But here's what this movie did that just doesn't even happen anymore, except maybe Top Gun Maverick. But
once in a lifetime. Twice in a lifetime.
It debuts in number 1 in its first week. Goes to number 3 in its second week because Superman 2 came out. Also, the Cannonball Run. So it dipped behind those. Week
That's
4.
some stiff competition.
Yeah.
Man, Burt is always on the heel. Like Star Wars was Smokey and the Bandit, right? It was like,
well, considering this was exactly.
Burt Reynolds hated George Lucas and Steven
Come on, you're really killing me here.
Yeah. Considering that Superman 2 was really something people look forward to, and Raiders kind of flew under the radar.
Yeah.
For this movie to make $100 million more than Superman 2 and On Golden Pond, which were actually number 3 and 2. On Golden Pond made more money than Superman 2.
Isn't that crazy? A crazy time when On Golden Pond could make Jaws money.
Yeah, but it made $100 million more than the second place movie. So back when $100 million meant a lot. But the point is, it went back to number 1 in its 6th week, where it remained for most of the next 9 weeks and had 40 straight weeks in the top 10.
Wow,
that just doesn't happen anymore.
No,
wow,
that doesn't.
Movies were in theaters for an entire year. Yeah,
that even with movies like Maverick, no.
Not going to happen. But pretty damn good run, still going. But
I saw Star Wars in the theater 8 times over the course of 3 years. That's re-releases and initial release. like when would that happen?
So what is the first time you saw it, and what was that experience like, Dan?
Man, I mean, it was definitely on VHS.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that for sure. I don't know exactly. It's one of those movies that, like, it's just sort of...
It's always been there, right? Yeah.
I couldn't tell you the first time that I saw it. Like, I remember seeing Jurassic Park for the first time. I remember the first time I saw Star Wars, I taped it off the USA Network. And wrote Star Wars on the spine of the tape that I, had the commercials on it. I wish I still had that tape.
SP, LP, or SLP?
Well, okay.
Did you fit 2 more movies on there, Dan?
Here's
or
the
just
thing.
The one? I
tended to prioritize quantity over quality, so I would go SLP because I could get 3 movies. If I cut the commercials out, I could get 3 movies on one tape.
Dan, my favorite question to ask people: what were the other 2 movies on that tape?
Oh my goodness, who even knows? Honestly, it was probably Star Wars, and then like 6 episodes of Star Trek: The Next Generation.
There's always that too. You can always fill out the tape with some Night Court.
Exactly.
Mine always
something. But weirdly enough, I don't think I ever owned it until I bought it on DVD.
Yeah.
But I'd seen it. I probably rented it. I don't know how many times. So it's weird. Like, it wasn't one of those like Batman or Jaws where like I grew up watching it all the time.
Yeah, over and over and over.
But it's just always been a movie that I loved, and I could not tell you where it comes from. It just is. It's like in my DNA. I don't know.
Dan, I'm older. Saw it in the theater. My brother said, you need to go see this.
Saw it in the theater.
So I went, and I came home
crazy.
and it blew my mind. Nothing ever. And this is Han Solo. I love Han Solo. And now look what he's doing. And so immediately Harrison Ford, favorite actor of all time. Been that way ever since.
I mean, Star Wars and Empire were just so incredibly formative. Obviously, there was all the toys, all the Star Wars hype. It was the only thing I was interested in. I wasn't interested in football. I was interested in movies. Obviously, I'm still here doing it. But Star Wars came out of nowhere. There's suddenly a thing called Star Wars. Oh, by the way, do you know there's a thing called movies? Also, do you know there's a thing called direct? I mean, so that kind of all came out. I didn't know sequels existed till Empire Strikes Back. It was so shocking to me that I was going to get to see this movie that I loved. There's a sequel. Wait, it's the same people? Hold on. I'm not old enough. Yeah, they're doing it again? Hold on, I'm not old enough to understand. By Raiders, I now knew there were people behind this and that there were sequels and things like that and big events. So, Raiders, I was oh, I know to be excited in a very specific way. So, man, getting to the theater for that, Raiders was just such a joy.
All right, so let's talk about why this movie works. And I'll give you the one reason I have to why Raiders of the Lost Ark works so well. And a lot of action movies have failed to do this in its wake. It is that they set up the rules right away, brilliantly. Well, first they introduce the character in a real fun way, and then it's right to the rules, right? We got the Ark, the Nazis wanted this, we're going to do the whole thing. Didn't any of you guys go to Sunday school? All this stuff, it's all there, but the great skeptics.
Power of God.
Power of God or something.
Power of God or something.
And then, once you do that, you can have fun.
Oh, I know,
as long as you don't betray what you've already set up. And that's it. It's that simple. And they do that over and over again in this movie. It's we're having fun, but we haven't lost the fact that there are real stakes here. It's not just goofy. We're not smoking cigars and uploading a virus to the spaceship and having ourselves a grand old time after 2 billion people just died.
Yeah.
No, they really set up the stakes of what's important, have fun, and maintain both to the end.
Yeah.
Is there another reason this movie works, or an agreement with me? Anyone want to agree with me?
I'll agree
with you, definitely.
Yeah, but man, I got to tell you, that two-fisted man of action sort of thing going on there of he's going to get this back because he's the hero. You can't stop him. He's going to until the last moment, and the action builds and builds and builds as he tries to get the Ark back. And, he's just so cut from movie marble, he's carved out of all the great heroes of Hollywood. So you just extra want him to get his goal, and you want him to go through all the minefields to get there.
I mean, here's what I think works though. That
and he's gonna.
He's just making this up as he goes.
I think that's
why the human thing. Yeah,
that's why people love him so much. I think it would have been easy for Harrison Ford to come in and just be I'm going to be Han Solo again. I'm just gonna play Han Solo. That's gonna be my type. I'm gonna be, an old school 50 star, and every guy I play is the same because I'm Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
And that's not what, I've never been one of those people that's just Han Solo and Indiana Jones are the same character. They're not the same character.
No.
What I think people love about this character is that he is, he's in incredible shape, obviously. And he's smart, but he's not invincible, and he doesn't want to fight anybody. Han Solo. Han Solo's the guy that runs into a fight with his blaster, and he's just I'm going to take on the Empire by myself, and I can do it because I'm Han Solo. And Indiana Jones is I don't want to.
Yeah, he does that very thing in the plane. Let's go, American. He's
I don't want to really. Come on, you just let me dig in the ground and let me get the thing and go home. And he plays that so well. He's not some macho guy. That's he's not Captain America. He's just I don't want the Nazis to win, so I guess I'll go get this thing, but I don't want to. I want to.
It belongs in a museum. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I want to protect these things, and it's his frustration over the whole movie. That's why I'm sure we'll talk about it, but the whole having to do the improvisation with the sword guy works so well for the character, because you believe that Indiana Jones would just be I'm just going to shoot this guy. I don't want to fight anymore. And that's what I love about the character. And I think that's why people love him, is because he is a Superman, but also he's relatable in the sense that I would probably act the same way in that situation. I don't want to have to do all this stuff, but then again, I don't like Hitler. So I'm going to do it.
Well, I've always taken the word superhero and in certain cases put a space in between the two words. This is a super hero.
Yeah.
Like, he is extra heroic. He's extra going to save the day. If Marion's in trouble, he's extra going to get her back. He's more than your regular hero. But the humanity thing, I love that when he fights the bald guy, who he's clearly outmatched from, that he tries to throw dirt in his face, tries to kick him in the balls.
Yeah.
like
every dirty trick in the book.
Every dirty trick in the book. And you're like, wow, this is Han Solo. It's just a whole different version. That is just so unique, you know?
Yeah. And Ford himself was quoted as saying he wanted to play him as academic first, adventurer second. To your point about his smarts.
Yeah, we forget he's a school teacher and all talking about all this action. What a great foundation for the character. And you're just dropped into after the initial adventure in this, like, and now we're at a school.
Yeah.
And he's talking, and you're like, oh, archaeology. I don't know if I knew the word archaeology before this. I was like, the hero's an archaeologist? What is that?
And I love that his students, that's one of the things that early on is like, and I think that goes to the brilliance of the script, is you're introduced with this huge action sequence and the boulder and the thing and flying in the plane. And then you cut to the classroom with students that don't care. Like, I mean, the girls have a crush on him, but everyone else is like, oh, whatever. It's
like,
my
if you were there,
archaeology professor, Dr. Jones.
Yeah, if you're there, it'd be like, do you know what he just did? How he spent the weekend? Yeah, exactly.
It's amazing, yeah.
So let's do a timeline of how this goes. 1973, Lucas gets the idea, and he bases it on old serials, as I think we all know, and he shares it with Philip Kaufman. 1975 about then. Yes. Oh, wait a minute. Let me jump ahead to, just because it needs to be said, the rogues gallery of legends who made this movie. Okay, so you got Ford, Spielberg, Lucas, Lawrence Kasdan, Philip Kaufman working on the story, Frank Marshall, John Williams in the London Symphony Orchestra, Michael Kahn editing, Ralph McQuarrie, Drew Struzan, Ben Burt, Kevin O'Connell, 16-time sound nominee and winner of an Academy Award, Richard Edlund, Vic Armstrong, legendary stunt guy, Kathleen Kennedy was at time Spielberg's assistant, Leslie Dilley doing the production design, Joe Johnston was in there storyboarding, and Deborah Noodleman created the iconic look of Indiana Jones. So this is a just crazy all-star game making a movie.
And I'll add one more name to it, the original drawings of Indiana Jones, just based on the idea of who he was. I think that's Jim Steranko, the creator of Nick Fury. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the Marvel guy they brought in, which is interesting because Ralph McQuarrie didn't work on too much. I think he drew the Ark being open in the giant Bible.
Oh, okay.
Otherwise, it was that guy. Yeah, otherwise it was that guy. So anyway, Kaufman comes in, suggests the Ark be the big prize of the movie, and also took out Jones as a nightclub patron and womanizer, which is something they were wanting to go more Bond with him.
Right.
And that all got changed by Kaufman and later by Kasdan.
Good move.
Which is what makes you not have to apologize for anything in this movie. If one of the students, because that's the scene that's cut, when Marcus Brody comes over, supposedly one of his students was there and she left as they started to talk. No. If that was still in there, you'd be like, all right, well, there's one thing that's a little, so it's gone.
Well, there's one tiny thing. We'll get to it.
Oh, okay.
Marion. There's a question about the timing, but we'll get to that.
Right.
No, we can talk about that now because they say that I was a child.
Well, it's not like it's not addressed. It was wrong and you knew it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So but it is the one thing you kind of have to go like, well...
Okay, but hold on.
It was it's set in the 30s, I guess. I don't know.
But hold on. Wrong is doing a lot of heavy lifting because Wrong, she can be 18... But he's older and playing with the emotions of someone who is of legal age. That's also wrong.
Yes.
We all go to the darkest place imaginable. That's on us a little bit.
As long as you don't hear about the original story pitches for the movie, then we can just ignore it and move on.
Which we don't.
They discussed that quite a bit.
At length, and it did not end up where we
Which we don't in the film.
Yeah. Okay, but I want to say that too much research ruins a movie. I only talk about movies from minute 1 to minute 120.
Yes.
If you go do internet research and find out somebody's a shithead, that is on you. Because the movie didn't give any of that. It's just a movie,
Yes.
All that talk about the story gets worked out with Kaufman, and Kaufman might have directed, but I didn't know this. He wrote The Outlaw Josie Wales. I was unaware of that.
Oh, wow.
And so he went to work on that with Eastwood. And so Spielberg joins the project. This is crazy, right? So Lucas makes Star Wars, runs to Hawaii because he doesn't want to be around for any of the response. And he's there with Spielberg. They talk about making this. And so, of course, then on the set of this, Melissa Matheson and him start working on something because she came to visit her husband, Harrison Ford. They start making ETs. Like one thing to the next of all this, what I call genius incest of the 70s and 80s. So eventually Kasdan's brought on to fill in the gaps between things like that were established, like the Boulder, the Monkey in Cairo, and Toad. I guess his name is Todd.
Is it Todd?
Todd.
Well, that makes sense. That's an Egyptian sounding name. Tot.
It's a German.
Tut or Tot.
I always said Tote.
I did too because that's how it looked. But I guess it's the German word for death.
Oh, interesting.
So anyway, Spielberg
I had the
wanted...
Todd action figure. Anybody else? Anybody else?
I want the Todd candle.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
Oh, you almost got that for your birthday a couple years ago. And then they closed down the Alamo because that's where they sold it. It was close to your birthday. We went there. I was like, I got to get that for Paul's cake. And then the pandemic came, and then that.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah. We went to see.
You almost got that once.
I remember the Alamo.
Yeah, you do.
This is just for me, but Lucas, he's in love with the old serials. That's what we base this on, including one called Don Winslow of the Navy.
Love it.
Oh. Do you love?
What a great title. Yeah.
Okay, the title.
Oh, I haven't seen Don.
It's the greatest title ever.
Don Winslow of the Navy.
Winslow, Don Winslow, Don Winslow of the Navy.
Quick, get the hero, Don.
Don.
That's the best.
Quick, get Don.
Where's Don? Don Winslow of the Navy. Get him in here right now.
It's I, Don
yes,
Winslow.
Mr. President.
Don Winslow of which branch of the Navy, sir? Get me Don.
So into the characters then.
Everybody, Winslow. Oh, sorry. Nobody
Winslow
else
of the Navy. All right. Well, speaking of Todd,
he's our favorite Don.
Don Winslow, I come to you. I forget. Never mind.
You come to Don Winslow asking for forgiveness on the day of my daughter's wedding.
Don Winslow, someday I will need a favor from you. And on that day, I hope the battleship is under your control.
Francis Ford Coppola actually loved it too. They overdubbed Winslow with Corleone after they shot The Godfather.
Shot the whole thing as Winslow.
They thought that Don Winslow was a little soft, so they went with Corleone.
You'll face the wrath of Don Winslow.
Don Winslow, can you do me this favor? That's Michael Winslow. Sorry.
Sonny and Michael Winslow. Sonny Winslow. Fredo Winslow.
Fredo Winslow.
Would have been a different.
Fredo Winslow's the one that does the sound effects. You broke my heart.
See, I knew that would get some wind. That's what a name for an old thing. But to think that spawned Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's also funny that the serial thing with Star Wars, like the Flash Gordon thing. Such an interesting doubling down on serial style storytelling again and really mastering it in terms of you could cut this movie into 20-minute chunks and go, how's Indiana Jones going to get out of this one? Yep. And it's really elegantly done. When last You are the Michael Winslow of the show.
That's true.
I guess I'm the Tackleberry.
Let me tell you something else. I always bring this up on
I'm
the show
your Tackleberry.
You're probably tired of hearing me saying this all the time, too. But, when a movie looks cheap and lame and uses too much CGI, I go, for Christ's sake, go out there and get dysentery. That's what they did in this movie. They went to Tunisia, for the love of God. Even the fourth one, when Cate Blanchett as Indy captured early in the film, they're clearly on a set in front of the whatever hangars where they eventually find them.
Are you saying that jungle was not real?
Go get dysentery. So one of the great things about Raiders is the locations.
Yeah.
Elstree Studios, of course, yes, they built the Peruvian cave from the beginning of the movie there, but France, Tunisia, and Hawaii. And it shows, it looks so good, and they still didn't go over budget, so it can be done, people.
Get on a plane, leave Burbank, and get on a
break
freaking
Harrison
plane.
Ford's
I think that just happened, yeah.
Those, with the, whatever, what is that, the system now? What is that called? The new green screen
the
stage?
volume.
The volume?
Yes, the content.
Oh, yeah. In El Segundo, that one, yeah.
Get on a freaking plane.
By the way, you've mentioned the budget twice. One of my favorite things about this is Spielberg. You didn't direct one movie and then get your Marvel movie back then, right? You did one movie and then Hollywood said, you're probably lucky. You're probably not worth it. You're probably not any good at this actually still. Because there's this entrenched system. So he does Jaws and they go, well, this is the most amazing movie of all time. He does 1941 and they go, told you. See, guy's not worth it. Or Close Encounters, it's doesn't make a bunch of money or whatever. So for Raiders, it was like, no, we're cutting you off, Steven Spielberg. You go over budget, over time. This is all you're getting for it, and that's why they made such a down and dirty movie. And also, I love Spielberg with something to prove. When you watch a movie like Duel, Jaws, Raiders, where he's got something to prove, it's a sight to behold.
I felt with Ready Player One.
Oh my God!
Spielberg saying, I am here to prove that I could still make a crazy, big adventure, all kinds of I was skeptical because it'd been a while. So
Yeah.
I don't know if Steven Spielberg has it anymore. But I watched Ready Player One. I'm like, yep, nope, he can still do it.
Yeah. He's like, I'm going to dig myself into a pit, and I'm going to watch me get out of this filmmaking pit.
Yeah.
There's no film too hard for me to make. I'm Steven G.D. Spielberg.
Yeah. And West Side Story was another
West
one.
Side Story.
I was so skeptical. I was like, I don't care if it's Steven Spielberg. Nobody can remake this movie. And I watched it and I was like, shit. Well, okay. He's Steven Spielberg.
Can he do a musical?
Yeah. Yes, he can. Not only can he do a musical, he can rival one of the greatest movie musicals ever made with his version of it. I think it's a discussion, honestly.
And it's not lost on him that is the mountain he has to climb for that. I think sometimes critics go, well, what he doesn't know is that you shouldn't remake the original, or whatever.
Right.
Or what he doesn't know is that Lincoln,
hubris.
or whatever. Yeah. Oh, I bet he doesn't know that Lincoln's a very tough character, whatever. But it's never lost on him. That's exactly the challenge. He always wants to climb a mountain. Yeah.
Much like Indiana Jones.
Hey.
Well, that's why Frank Marshall and Howard Kazanjian were brought on board, because apparently they were very meticulous about budget.
Yeah.
Because Spielberg had been going over, and Lucas had been fighting for every dollar for everything that he had made previously.
Yeah, also not trusted by Hollywood. Like, yeah, okay, we'll see.
So, how about this? You'll appreciate this then. So, Michael Eisner was running Paramount at the time, mandates an 85-day shoot. So, Spielberg says, we'll do 73. And they did.
Wow.
So, he self-mandated that to make sure he didn't
And that's
screw
why
it up.
it's just so, you just feel dropped into those scenes. It's so visceral because Spielberg had to be creative in a quicker amount of time with less fussing about things. So you really are watching much more than a lot of Spielberg films, the very idea he had at that moment, because they wouldn't have that many takes and yet they're trying to achieve action on a level that has never been seen before. And really, for many, many, many years until the current era, nothing can beat the incredible, trying to accomplish this much action, modern action, what we would call modern action now. In 1981, that's another hill that he set himself up to climb of this is 10 times as much action as you'd find in any other action movie. When you think about James Bond movies at the time, what's the 1981 James Bond movie, which would be the height of action at the time?
Are you saying For Your Eyes Only was not an action thrill ride?
It was an action thrill ride, but look at compared to Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah, but of course they're besought with problems, as all productions are.
Yeah. Making movies is impossible.
Yeah, and
God hates them to be made, and he will try and destroy you. And if you can make it through that, then you're a filmmaker.
Yeah. There's a Tunisian city sitting in for Cairo. They lost a day of filming because they had to remove about 300 TV antennas from the rooftops.
Okay.
Now that's the thing. People complain about CGI, but
that would have been nice back then.
Would have been nice to just delete them.
Just erase them in post.
Yeah. People are talking about
That's what CGI, by the way, is for.
Yeah.
It's to do impossible things, not to substitute for a four-wall set.
Yeah.
Well, a plane did roll over Harrison Ford's knee, but he wrapped it up and kept going.
Jeez.
What is with him and his knees?
Well, that's the thing. So that's what you always say about Force Awakens. You're like, well, here we had the practical door, now we have to stop production.
Now we have to. Hope you're happy. No CGI door. You'll love how realistic the door is.
Yeah.
They took us out of production for a month. Oh, that door is so realistic. God forbid that door should be CGI and Harrison Ford keeps shooting that day.
And there was a plane crash when the Ford was, I guess, hanging on the wing, or a stuntman or somebody.
I thought you were going to say flying the plane.
And it hit well, that's the thing. It's just like his first plane crash. So we can also mark this as a historic event.
Oh, wow.
A leg was hitting the wing flap, and it was only about 20 feet up, and it had to come back down again unexpectedly.
So it wasn't a bad plane crash.
No, but it was his first. So mark the date.
Ain't so bad, kid.
We always talk about the golf course. I wish I was golfing
Oh,
when he landed, because he
God.
comes out of that thing like, is there a hospital around here?
You're like, oh my God. Wait.
Mind if I play
Tell me
through?
where this hospital. Yeah.
I mean, first of all,
Just the one line.
what's that?
Mind if I play through?
You know he had a good one-liner.
Walks
in
away
there.
from a crash.
By the way, if you live next to the golf course, a plane crashing on the golf course would be a story you would tell for the rest of your life already. Oh my God, a plane is crashing the golf course? Seeing Harrison Ford get out of that plane is a whole other level.
What was that moment like? Like you're on the golf course, oh my God, a plane crash, and you're like running towards it, and you see a figure emerging, and you're like,
Well,
is that Harrison Ford?
Is that Harrison
well, I also
Ford?
think
Are they shooting a movie? Did I?
I also think, oh, well, he's got this, right? I don't know.
Right.
I need my help.
In my mind, I imagine him emerging from the cockpit in the perfectly torn shirt, just putting out a fire on his sleeve with just smoke coming off, and then saying that line. Anyone got a hospital around here? Or yeah.
Well, here's a weird one. Stanley Kubrick's daughter visits the set and calls the Royal SPCA about the treatment of the snakes.
Ooh.
That lost him some time on set as well.
Wow. And that was Kubrick's daughter?
Yeah.
Wow.
Like, help, he's a friend. Let's bring her down. And then she, like, wrecks.
Are they shooting The Shining at the same studio?
Yeah,
I'm assuming, right?
They did
Elstree
shoot,
or Leavesden?
In fact, the Well of Souls is exactly where they shot The Overlook.
Oh, wow.
Just a different time.
It was haunted by the ghost of Kubrick's SPCA daughter. She stuck around.
The opening mountain from the Paramount logo into the mountain, it was in Hawaii. Kauai specifically, where I've been. And I didn't go to see, got this mountain.
You didn't find the Raiders Mountain. Well, you probably forgot. Well, but the field that he runs out with all the dust being chased by the Jovitos, that's the same field from Jurassic Park, I believe, because you can see like a fork tree.
Oh, yeah?
That's the Gallimimus run, I think, is the same field as that Indiana Jones running away from the Jovitos.
I got to go back to Kauai.
Yeah,
For some reason, I was just admiring the waterfalls of his movie locations. That changed when I went to Death Valley. I went to that place is Tatooine as hell. All right. Oh, and this is a mystery. I always wondered when Marion and Indy step out of the Well of Souls, they push the stone out, there's a dude there.
Yeah,
and I thought,
I never caught that for years.
Yeah, there's a guy there. I'm like, well, he's just some drunk or something. But they wouldn't have a drunk at the Nazi base. And then I thought, well, it was a fight they cut. Apparently, it was a guy who saw people emerge from the wall, and he fainted at the sight
because he thought
how amazing that was. And then they said, that's too goofy. And thankfully, yes, it is too goofy. Keep the stakes real, and we'll have fun when he gets in the fight and he has to do things like kick him in the balls and throw sand at him. That's the fun we could have within the confines of the stakes.
Right. I didn't catch that guy for years, and of course I realize now it's because I watched that movie Square at home. I wouldn't remember from the theater, but the movie was Square. Yeah, that guy isn't in any VHS copy until I get Blu-ray and I'm like, or DVD, and I'm like, oh, look at that. There's a guy there.
It's like when you watch Ghostbusters, when they walk into the hotel, I watch them like, oh, there's 3 of them in this scene.
Oh, right.
Because the hand scan, you get like Stantz and Spengler. And it's like, oh, no, they're all there. Yeah, I've missed 1/3 of the movie my entire life. They cut Winston out, by the way. We checked.
Right.
Because we were doing the honest trailer. Like when they're going up the stairs towards Zool at the end, they cut Winston out of the shot. Because, of course, they did.
That's a topic we'll no longer have to talk about. Racist pan and scan.
Exactly. Racist.
Not a modern
inherent
topic.
racism
anyway.
of pan and scan.
The inherent racism, of course, proven by the 4 of them entering.
Clearly, in the shot of Ragtime, they've not only expanded, but they zoomed in solely on
paper. It would be the inherent.
It's just James Cagney. There's a whole courtroom there.
Yep.
So, I mean, there's so much to talk about with this movie. What else should I talk about? Ford did the boulder run 10 times. It weighed 300 pounds. He was doing a no-joke stunt there.
Well, he makes it through that and then gets run over by a plane.
I always worry about the guy at the stunt show because I'm worried he actually does get run over. I'm like, he's gonna pop up, right? Even though I've seen the thing probably 5 times and I know but he's still every time he falls in front of the boulder, I'm like, oh no!
Yeah, and they left
Got
that
me
in.
again, Disney.
Yeah. So, how did Ben Burt make the sounds of snakes slithering?
I don't know this one. I know the boulder.
Well, you won't get it. He runs his hands through cheese casserole or uses wet sponges being dragged across grip tape.
Oh, wow. I love Foley stuff like that.
Let me keep going then. The rolling boulder is a Honda Civic driving down a gravel hill.
Yeah, that's the one I heard.
The Ark spirits flying around once the Ark is opened. Sea lions and dolphins filtered through a vocoder.
Ooh. Wow. Oh, man. Yeah, Ben Burt with the vocoder and the THX. I go back to the old Ford Fiesta where I compared the THX, the sound. Well, actually, no, that's Walter Murch, but same sort of school of sound effects. That vocoder thing that they would put in there, and then all the sound of the Red 5, all that stuff is got that same thing. They love that.
I'd love to be the guy back in 1976 that's like in Northern California, wherever they were doing the sound for Star Wars. That's like looking across the street at some nerd with a headset on, tapping power lines. So like, what the hell is that guy doing? Like, he's crazy. And little do they know he's making like the soundtrack to the 20th century.
I know, right? I know. Yeah. Let me stick a microphone down this scuba tank.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
The legendary punch is hitting a pile of leather jackets with a baseball bat.
That sounds about right.
Do it, Paul.
Anyway.
Winslow, Michael Winslow.
Of the Navy.
Of the police.
An interesting fact, the whip crack is Ford using his whip. They just recorded it.
He was good with that thing. When you watch behind-the-scenes stuff, so awesome. And he's like got actors like 10 feet away from him, and he's like, and able to snap it right at him and not kill him. Amazing.
Other fun facts. Terry Richards, the swordsman shot by Indy in Cairo. You're like, rehearsed the whole scene. You never get that. Don't feel bad. He worked in about 100 projects, and this is where the facts get fun, including 9 James Bond movies. Plus, he played the Wampa.
Wow.
I knew that name.
You had to learn it.
I know some of that stuff, yeah.
Did he come back for the special edition, or did they have a different Wampa?
Oh, I'm not sure if he was alive.
Oh,
they shot all that new stuff.
They shot the new stuff. Yeah, I don't think the same Wampa came back.
Oh, that's a shame.
The ASPCA he came in. It's like
Kubrick's daughter.
Kubrick's daughter. Hey.
Hello.
Wampa treatment on set.
This is not Stanley Kubrick's daughter. I have information that a Wampa is being mistreated.
Considered for Indiana Jones: Bill Murray, Nick Nolte, Steve Martin, Chevy Chase, Tim Matheson.
Huh? What were they going for?
Nick Mancuso. And here's where they get a little better.
By the way, considering pulls a lot of weight in these sort of things. Like, I had a script that was Dustin Hoffman was considered for, and then they never talked to me again.
Right.
Like, what do you think? Do you think Dustin Hoffman for Ed Bus? This is like a meeting we had for Schadenfreude years ago. It's like, all right, sure. I don't know.
Well, these make a little more sense.
Michael Douglas?
Peter Coyote, Jeff Bridges.
Oh, yeah, Jeff Bridges. Tim Matheson, you had me there, too.
And, of course, Tom Selleck. Now, here's the part I didn't know before. Of course, he had to drop out because of his contract with Magnum P.I.
Why didn't they just CG?
Yeah, exactly.
Without a mustache.
Even if they got him during a break in Magnum P.I., he wouldn't have been able to shave that. He would be going right back to Magnum P.I. We would have had a mustached Harrison Ford.
Well, here's the thing.
Indiana Jones.
He said he couldn't do it. They start shooting Raiders. There's a writer's strike. Magnum P.I. gets pushed off. He could have shot it. But
didn't know.
Interesting.
Isn't that crazy?
Well, at that point,
this
they
is
were
what
like,
internet says. I'm going with internet.
Yes.
But come on, once you got Harrison Ford in the part, you're like, sorry. I don't, like a lot of people are like, what were they even thinking compared to Harrison Ford? I think they had that thought as soon as they started shooting with Harrison Ford.
The disrespect to Tom Selleck,
I
though.
know.
Listen,
He's
this was
great.
1980, probably, right around
he's
when they were doing this movie.
Almost a bigger rock star as Harrison Ford.
Tom Selleck is a golden god at this time. Don't judge Tom Selleck by today's standards.
No.
He was not Richard from Friends in 1980.
Right,
he was like one of the big, he was a big guy.
Yeah. He was a Pierce Brosnan. He was a Remington Steele. He was a big hottie.
I didn't know there's an audition tape with
It's
him
good.
and Sean Young.
And
They're
Sean
both
Young.
good. Yeah.
I did what I did. I don't expect you to be happy about it. But maybe it can do us both some good.
Why start
Just
now?
shut up. Shut up and listen to me. Now, I need that piece your father had.
Has anybody almost had more parts than Sean Young?
I know. And I never knew that was her until he showed me that clip, and I go, oh, it's Sean Young again. That poor girl. I mean, she was so upset. She, almost had Batman. She broke her arm. She did have Batman.
She was Vicky Vale.
She was Vicky Vale.
They put her on a horse for a scene that wasn't even in the movie.
Yeah, I remember that. She broke her arm on a horse, and you're like, for Batman? For the horse scene.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if Selleck could have pulled off the gravitas, though, because even in the teen, he's like, now, Marion, I need to get that piece.
Yeah.
I need to get the piece that
camera
that your father
tests
gave me.
are, camera tests.
Take him out of TV mode and put him into film actor mode,
Right.
So the aftermath, well, Lucas eventually called it the film shoot he had the least problems with because of lack of studio interference. If there's any running theme through all the shows we've done so far in the Ford Fiesta, it's studios trying to get in there and ruin everything that we love.
Studios are very different back then, too. Like, there was just this mistrust that any of these young guys were going to be worth a crap, but they're already at this point directing Godfather and Jaws and Star Wars, and the studios are like, whatever.
I love actually those 70s guys like Coppola, Lucas, Spielberg. Like if you read anything about it, it's like they were always. It was like Smokey and the Bandit at Cannonball Run. Like they were always on the run from the studios. Like put the camera in the trunk. And, it's like come back here, you cretins!
With my movie.
Like they're one step ahead of the executive.
Yeah, stealing their prints like THX.
I want to make that.
Yeah, like THX 1138 was going to be taken by the studios and recut, and after the screening, they had a whole system to steal it out the back door. Yep. Like there really was stuff like that going on.
You know what the difference was? It's that not all of them, but a lot of the producers back then were not studio lackeys. They were accomplices. Like Zanuck and Brown on Jaws. Right. They were the ones that were going to MCA and being like, I know, it's over budget. I know you don't think the kid can do it, but we're gonna they would now. now a lot of the producers are just an extension of the executives.
Out to save their ass.
Exactly. And they're not
save their job instead of do their job.
Exactly. They're not going to sit there and fight. Like, Frank Marshall, yes, he was there for budget, but like ultimately the guy's going to back Spielberg on this.
Right.
He's not going to back, Paramount and be
he's the guy that
we're shutting you down.
And he's the guy that knows how to say to the studio, look over here. Get out the back, get out the back.
Exactly.
Doors that way.
That's what that guy does.
Exactly. I think that's the difference with a lot of it, is that these producers, they actually back the filmmakers, and they would go to fight for the project too. You don't get that as much.
I think we have Jason Blum. That's about it, probably, right?
He's one of them.
Yeah.
He's one of them. Yeah.
And in the end, Paramount earns $23 million after compromising with Lucas to get it done. Earned $100 million more than on Golden Pond, and was still playing in theaters nearly a year later. So they
go to hell, Captain Hepburn.
Go to hell.
So what? You're telling me that movie topped us again? Bastard Spielberg.
Now who's the old poop, bitch?
Unknown fact, Steven Spielberg hates the elderly. I was very happy to see this movie do so much better than on Golden Pond.
They started developing Temple of Doom while Raiders was still in theaters, because it was a year later. Yeah. And Richard Amstel created the poster, which is legendary.
Amstel, yeah.
I see that Drew Struzan is very active on Twitter. And a lot of times he'll do he'll do thing like, did I draw it or did I not? And he he always gets people with Raiders because they're like, yeah, of course you did Raiders. He's like, nope.
Yeah, not the poster.
And you look at it, and my stepdad was an artist, and he knew Amstel's work before this, and was like, and pointed out, he's like, oh, this is Richard Amstel, and mentioned a lot of other stuff that Amstel did. But you look at it, and you see the sort of, especially in Indiana Jones' face, there is a certain sort of colored pencil line or whatever on his face that Struzan doesn't do, because he does a lot more, like a little more like watercolor, sort of like wash or whatever. But yeah, I think they look very distinctly different, the Raiders versus Temple of Doom.
So in 2000, and I'm not a fan of this, but I don't care, but I just don't think it's necessary. They make the movie Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah, that's...
it's not like my take on that is we don't say James Bond and the Man with the Golden Gun. We just know it's a James Bond movie.
Yeah.
I think we would know this is an Indiana Jones movie if we just left it
picture of
alone.
Indiana Jones on the cover kind of gives it away.
Yeah. So, all right, we're all in agreement.
And Raiders of the Lost Ark, very elegant title. Star Wars, very elegant title. Episode 4, A New Hope. Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, not an elegant title.
No.
I call it Star Wars.
It's Star Wars, yeah.
It's Star Wars.
Nominated for 8 Oscars, tied for the third most behind Reds and On Golden Pond.
What a time, huh? There you go. There's all your movies you want to see.
It wins for art direction, film editing, Michael Kahn, sound, visual effects.
Michael Kahn, the editor of Black Belt Jones. Sorry, I'm working on a project in which I just had to watch Black Belt Jones.
Oh, is that right?
He in fact edited it. Yeah, he worked a lot of low-budget stuff earlier.
And there's a special award for sound editing with Ben Burt and Richard L. Anderson.
Oh, that's right. That's before they made it an actual category. There was this weird time in the 70s and 80s with visual effects and sound where they were like special achievements, and then they're like, okay, fine, we'll give you a real Oscar for it.
It's only going to be around for this one movie, so special achievement.
Yeah.
Special effects aren't going to be popular.
They're not going to keep doing visual effects, right? No, just give them a special achievement.
This was kind of a crazy thing, like a mask in American Werewolf in London. Give them a little nod.
Exactly.
They can only give so many special Oscars to Pixar before they develop a Best Animated Film category.
Right. Yeah. Same thing.
But they lost Picture to Chariots of Fire, which I still haven't seen for this very reason.
No, because it's not an epic classic. Nobody watches Chariots of Fire. The least rewatched movie of all time.
Great music.
And the score, then it won score over Williams.
Yeah, I love...
Jealous over John Williams.
Mm-hmm.
I mean...
And then Vittorio, or as John Kaiser calls him, Vittorio Storaro. Wins cinematography over Douglas No Light Meter Slocum.
Yeah.
For Reds.
No Light Meter.
And Golden Globes give only a Best Director nomination to Spielberg, and I see why they're not around anymore. And Williams won.
Exactly why.
That's exactly why.
It's because they did not nominate Steven Spielberg for Raiders
of the Lost Ark. Karma.
Play with fire.
Might take a while, but it'll get there.
Williams won a Grammy for the score, and Lucas holds a Guinness World Record for box office as a screenwriter, not just because of this, because of his body of work, but that's part of it. And the critics...
Because he also wrote Radioland Murders.
Yeah. Right.
And
put him over the top.
Magic,
Red Tails.
Red Tails,
put him over the top.
Put him over
the critics got on the right side of history with this one, too. The National Board of Review and Vincent Canby had in their top 10 list. Hollywood Reporter, Variety, Siskel and Ebert, Time. Guess who gave it a bad review? There's two you could guess.
Okay. All right. Hold on.
Pauline Kael.
Correctamundo.
Yeah.
Okay. And the other one's got to be Rex Reed.
But I don't know what.
I mean, the worst critic of all time. If you don't like any movie, then what are you even doing?
This is why I say
I'm a car critic. I don't like any cars.
When people don't like,
what an authority.
When I talk about critics, I always talk about the fact that like Pauline Kael and Roger Ebert too have written some of the reviews that I agree with the absolute least. I'm like, your point of view is utterly I cannot relate to it, and yet they are some of the best critics of all time.
Right.
Because that's how critics work. It's like, even if you disagree with them, you could still be good at your job. That's how it works.
But she really doesn't like a lot. Like, she should just be in a different business.
She had a very unique point of view.
I can feel Ebert's love of movies. Pauline Kael just... I don't understand why she did that. What she did.
One of my favorite jokes in The Critic was this. It's something like, I think it was like Pauline Kael. Like, oh, look over there, it's Pauline Kael. And this like sound effect just like came in.
Well, here's what she said: Lucas and Spielberg were more marketeers, creating a film that would appeal to a broad audience. Problem with that would be what?
Yeah, at the time you're like, it's no Coming Home, because that didn't appeal to that appealed to so few people. That was so whatever, like the depressing movie of the time.
Ebert said the truck chase surpassed action sequences in Bullet and The French Connection, and Lucas eventually named a villain in Willow after Kael. Ironically played by Pat Roach, your bald, tough guy from Raiders.
Right, yeah.
So, yeah.
I was just talking about, I saw a movie that Ebert didn't like, The Thing.
Yeah.
He hated The Thing. He hated
Carpenter's The Thing?
Yeah. He said it was disgusting. It was the most revolting movie he'd ever seen. These characters were terrible. It was just a cheap action. It was just a cheap horror movie about jump scares, completely empty, blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, see, like, you don't have to agree with him. Like, I disagree wholeheartedly, but like, he hated it. And Siskel was like, oh, I think it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Talking more about the legacy, it becomes the biggest selling VHS of all time. Books depict other adventures, but there seems there's no end. You know, a unicorn horn, Indy's looking for the Staff of Moses, the Tower of Babel, Atlantis, Noah's Ark. I have no idea what the new film's plot device is.
Very exciting.
It doesn't sound like it's any of this stuff. Nothing's leaked out. They've talked about the Fountain of Youth for years. I mean, I'm curious to see.
Not killing Harrison Ford. I believe it's the number one mission of the new Indiana Jones.
They did it. I think they did it.
It seems like they might have done it.
I don't think they can kill him in post.
No.
So I think that's good. It looks like they were shooting in New York because it seems like every movie is a different continent, right? We had Asia, or we had Europe for Last Crusade. And so this one could go. Who knows where this one goes? So
I just love that they cover a different decade each time, too, that this one takes place in the 60s, at least partially in New York.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows? But it would be cool if some of the adventures, Indiana Jones in the city. You know, I mean, I love when sequels to movies kind of flop the premise of like, oh, he's always in the woods or whatever. Like, well, what do we take that and put it in the city, you know?
I would love it if they announced the title and it was like a Babe 2 situation. It's like Indiana Jones 5, Indy in the City.
Indy in the City.
Well, that's why Ghostbusters Afterlife finally worked, because I mean, I really wish that they had gone somewhere other than New York with the Ghostbusters 2016.
That's exactly the.
And so by the time let's take it to the countryside. All right, something different. I think people have really absorbed it.
Yeah.
Anyone have Raiders of the Lost Ark for Atari 2600?
Oh, hell yeah. Okay, hell yeah. Brief side story here. Atari 2600 was not just popular amongst kids, it was popular amongst adults. My parents, there were significant times where we could not play Atari because all of my parents' friends were over playing hockey or whatever, and the kids would have to go play their own games because the adults are playing their Atari 2600. My mom had the schedule of a modern-day gamer with that game. That game was so hard. Do you know this? Do you know the game?
I did not spend a lot of time with Atari.
No.
I'm a Nintendo baby. I'm a Nintendo baby.
If I'm not mistaken, you're a dot running between lines trying to get another dot?
No, look. Yeah, you're thinking of
every
adventure.
Atari game ever.
You're thinking of adventure. Oh, how adventurous it was. No, he actually looked like a little Indiana Jones guy.
He had the hat and everything.
But the amount of complexity on how to get from one thing to another, and you had to do this and grab this, and then you had a satchel like you would in modern games right now. Like you would have to carry all these things. You have to go get that. And so here's the thing. In 1982, I think that's when we got our Atari, or 83 even, Mom had to call Atari to figure out how to get it. Because in the map room, you go in the thing, and if you're a little bit off and the sun rises, because it goes and the sun rises, you have to switch to your thing to the raw, which she had to figure out how to get to begin with. The sun comes up, And then at that moment, you have to go to the right, and it drops you off a thing. And but it's like you could never figure that out on your own. But my mom got the Ark.
What a job!
Yeah,
what a job to have.
She would just go on the internet and see how it was done.
Nope, did not.
I got a housewife on 3. I can't get through Raiders of the Lost Ark. Not that your mom was a housewife.
That's funny. We got 5 other housewives on hold.
I got a 6-year-old on 3 stuck on ET. Just tell him to scrap it. Tell him to throw the game away. Tell him it's not worth it. Don't waste your time.
That one was not worth calling Atari for.
No.
That was like, but
just don't bother.
What are your thoughts, Dan, on the Big Bang Theory's idea that Indy accomplishes nothing in the film? Have you heard this?
I don't like this. The idea, this theory that just like Indiana Jones is a passive observer in the film, that he doesn't actually do anything. Like, I disagree wholeheartedly with that, because it's like, first of all, it's about the journey.
Right.
First of all, like,
watching movies wrong.
He finds the Ark. First, the Nazis would never have found.
They're digging in the wrong place.
They're digging in the wrong place. So fine, if you want a movie that's about a Nazi expedition in the desert that doesn't turn up anything, congratulations. Raiders of the Lost Ark is unnecessary.
You've solved all the problems.
It's
the correct answer.
Adventure. That's the point of the movie. That I hate. I've done this before. This idea of, I think because I work for Honest Trailers, people are like, they think that I'm one of these guys that's like takes a movie apart and it's like, if all these little pieces don't fit together in a 100% logical way, then it's a bad movie. Like, no, that's not how it's supposed to work. Indiana Jones works because it's an adventure. And if Indiana Jones hadn't found the Lost Ark, then there'd be no movie. It would be the most boring piece of crap ever. It'd be Indiana Jones is in a classroom and the Nazis are digging in the sand.
Yeah.
That's not a very good movie. So the movie works because the sequences work together. It's about the characters. It's about the journey. And the great thing about this character is that he is constantly having to react to whatever crazy thing happens around him. He just wants to go home. He would have loved to dig up the Ark, put it in a box, go home. He makes class on Tuesday, but then the Nazis find it. Great. Well, now I got to deal with this. And so, like, one of the things that I love is that he doesn't blow up the Ark because he is, at his heart, he's an archaeologist. Even if it means the Nazis win. I can't
history.
blow up this piece of history.
Yeah.
Let me just...
Yeah.
Rant there. That was great.
I hate that movement of just like, I'm going to break down the plot of every movie, and if everything doesn't make 100% logical sense, no movie makes logical sense. That's why they're movies. It's not to say that you should just like completely abandon logic and just make a story that's all full of like completely unreasonable. It just means that like you have to understand at a micro level that these are movies.
The film is selected for preservation in the National Film Registry by the U.S. Library of Congress in 1999.
Damn right.
And
what took them so long?
Damn.
To your point of something you mentioned earlier, John Rhys Davies alone has said he's met 150 people plus who have gone on to become lecturers, professors, and archaeologists because of this movie. So it did have an effect of glamorizing that, making it look
what all the President's Men was to journalism, this was to archaeology. Yeah.
Steven Spielberg inspired a whole generation of paleontologists, archaeologists, and fishermen. I don't know.
To realize it's not as exciting as you thought.
No. Someone collecting a pension right now, like, I never went on a quest for the Holy Grail. What have I done with my life? I let Indiana Jones convince me.
I got a couple more things to cover, but final thoughts? Dan?
I mean, it's just a great movie. It's rare that you get a movie that'll give you a movie high like Indiana Jones. And it is filmmaking down to its DNA, purest form. There's some movies that you can show, you can show Raiders in 40 years and still say to a modern audience and to modern filmmakers, this is how you make a movie. This is what a good movie is. There's very few movies that
this is
like
how they
that.
work.
This is how they work. And it's like, it's because it was written, it was made, and by people that know how movies work. Steven Spielberg knows how movies work. Filmmaking down to its basics.
Yeah. And I say they also benefited from being a 1981 film. It doesn't take place in 1981, so it's not forever mired in the 80s like On Golden Pond, for example, which looks super dated with the haircuts and
that's why Porky still works. People forget that's a 50s
it's 1936.
Well, and because so much of it was done practically, it doesn't look out of date from an effects standpoint.
Correct.
Even the stuff with the Ark. because it's like it's one specific sequence, and even the effects that they're doing are mostly opticals. They're it's still practical elements. I mean, you're actually melting a face at the end. You're actually blowing up a head at the end.
You're figuring out how to solve that problem. How do we make a face melt? Because in the computer, the problem is solved already. You just have to execute.
So even that doesn't look particularly dated. It's in the style of the movie. So I just think it's one of those movies. It's timeless.
And Spielberg said that he liked looking at the dailies to know if the effect worked immediately.
Because you don't have to give it off to the lab, and then 2 weeks before the movie's out, you're like,
how was that shot? We'll let you know in 3 days.
So here's a quick plug before I go. Also, watch on YouTube or listen to anywhere you get podcasts. Countdown to 9. This is a show that Sean Blodgett and I covered back in 2019. We did a show every month covering a different Star Wars movie, 1 through 8 until episode 9 came out, and all the other stuff in between as well, the Rogue One and all those. So we're going to fire up Countdown to 5 in 2023, starting in January, watching all the Indiana Jones films, 1 per month, and we're starting actually with the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, which I have to watch between now and January, which I've never seen.
Are you watching all of them?
Yeah.
Oh, that's all. That's a great rewatch. Oh, what a great way to celebrate the new Indiana Jones movie, because those shows are pretty good, and they're doing a lot and shooting it on film for TV. And the huge budgets, yeah, really cool and great.
Yeah, I never saw
great cast. Oh my gosh!
I think I watched the episode where Ford appeared as his older self. That's the only one I watched because I like him so much.
Yeah.
But I got to go watch that. So that'll be coming in January. Side note: IMDb's new layout sucks. Let's get to the Ford definitive list of essentials.
They killed Box Office Mojo. Anyway, continue.
That too. The IMDb they redo. This will help. You'll find things much easier. Nope.
Thanks, Amazon.
Let's go through the Harrison Ford list of essentials.
Topical.
In this movie, does he have righteous anger?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
He has the righteousness of history and science.
Well, this is going to have
and it's from a good place. Good call.
Not being a Nazi.
This is going to be all yeses. By the way. I mean, smile and charm. Trust me.
Trust me.
Yes, of course he does.
Oh my gosh. So much. Yeah.
Shout or growl. Jesus. Right.
Yeah.
When it's
Jesus.
plenty of that.
Oh, Jesus.
Lots of that.
But basically, how Harrison Ford is he in this in a percentage scale? The answer is 100.
100.
100%.
This is 100% Harrison Ford. This is the ultimate by which all others are to be compared. I mean, I don't know what we gave Han Solo. I don't think we went 100 with that. Yeah, Han Solo, even though
perhaps because he didn't fill the screen. Wasn't. I don't know. Yeah, did we?
Yeah,
he didn't shout a lot as Han Solo.
In Empire, he does.
Yeah, he does. He does in Empire. That's true.
Come on, Goldenrod. You're going to be a permanent resident.
I mean, the pointing definitely in Empire, at least.
Yeah.
No, he got way pointy. It's
very pointy, very shouty in Empire. It may be the best pointing and shouting he does.
This one goes there. That one goes there. I say that in my head 500 times a week.
Punch it. Thinking about these action sequences and how they're stacked together and sequenced to build up, it's just like and by the time you get to the end, it's one after another after another. It just nobody had done anything like that.
Yeah,
like even James Bond's ending action sequence is going to be 4 minutes, and they're going to have 20 minutes before where they're driving trucks, or walking or whatever. It's just incredible.
Every time I watch it, I'm like,
the third act of this movie. Oh my god! And then the movie takes such joy because this is Steven Spielberg, and we've always there's always the story of Steven Spielberg how he used to love scaring his sisters, and so that whatever he could do, lock them in a closet, darkness is scary and other sort of stuff. Like you can tell the joy. The last time we saw it, Paul, at the New Beverly, you could just tell the joy of Spielberg when he's on a roll. He knows he has the audience, and he's rolling him into the next thing. So as soon as the wing is done, they're taken out by truck. Truck? What truck? Dun, 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 dun. I mean, it's taken such joy. It's amazing. Really, what an achievement.
All right, well, that wraps Raiders of the Lost Ark. Not that we're done talking about it, but really, time is up. This was our longest episode. I'm not surprised. Sorry. This is my favorite movie of all time. I could keep going.
This has been such a great tribute to our favorite movie of all time, having a bona fide critic. This he's bona fide.
Yeah, give us other plugs. Do you have social?
I have social, yeah. I'm on Twitter, @MurrellDan, YouTube, Dan Murrell Movies. I have an Instagram that I don't use.
Excellent. And you can find us at The Movie Guys everywhere on social media or wherever you listen to the show, and, of course, TheMovieGuys.net. Next up, Blade Runner as this crazy 80s run of Harrison Ford.
It's incredible, right? He's going to go right from this to working with Ridley Scott.
Crazy.
In a crazy Ridley Scott, the most Ridley Scott that might have ever happened.
That's true.
The most obsessive, most...
we'll see you there with our special guest, Dave Sachs.
Yeah, our good friend Dave Sachs, who we've known from improv for years, great authority on Blade Runner, and since the day I met him, that we've talked about Blade Runner. So it's going to be a good convo. I have one last thing to add before we leave.
I want to hear it, Adam.
I taped Raiders of the Lost Ark on SLP. Would you venture to guess what the other two movies on that tape, and a special tape, by the way, at the time, you could buy your cheap VHS videotapes, and then you could buy the very expensive $15 cassette that was made of some sort of metal type, Avalon metal, like all these made-up words. Adamantium metal. And this was like, I got it for Christmas. It was a very special tape, and I said, I'm going to only tape my favorite movies on this. I will tell you, of the two movies that are on that tape, only one is a favorite movie. The other is merely connected by theme to the second movie on the tape. Okay. SLP. Raiders of the Lost Ark.
The Goonies?
No.
Poltergeist?
No.
Thinking of that era. Rocky 3?
No.
Tron?
No. Go backwards a little bit. Before Raiders.
Pre-Raiders. Okay.
Is it Harrison Ford?
Yeah.
Oh, Empire Strikes Back.
Empire Strikes Back. Now, you'll never guess the third.
Is it
It is sci-fi.
Ice Pirates?
God, you were literally so close, Paul Preston. That was insane. You went Ice Pirates? It easily could have been Ice Pirates. I loved Ice
then
Pirates.
It's Space Hunter 3D Adventures in the Forbidden Zone.
Metal Storm, The Destruction of Jared Sin.
Wow.
You almost made it in 3, because that second one was even closer.
Next, I was going You're the Hunter from the Future. So I got there with 4 or 5 guesses.
That was an amazing 1-2, though. That's why I gave it to you on 3. Good. Yeah.
I think when you hear Metal Storm, The Destruction of Jared Sin, the show is over. Yeah.
Winslow. Come on, guys. When will they be?
Don Winslow.
Son of a bitch.